All right, so, well, most of you here know that I'm Ross Ulbricht's mother, and that he was given a double life sentence plus 40 years, all nonviolent charges, first-time offender, no history of any crime or violence, never charged with causing any death or bodily injury to anybody. No victims were named at trial. And no possibility of parole, because that is what the evil criminal justice system in this country has done for all federal inmates. It used to be after 30 years you got out for good behavior. Now you never get out except as a corpse. Ross is in there for creating what prosecutors say was his role in creating and operating the Silk Road. So now for that, he's caged in this place. I'm visiting him. Behind me is 3 layers of razor wire and 2 sniper towers in this one section to protect us all from Ross. He's in here not because he's violent, although this is where the Bureau of Prisons puts its most violent people and dangerous gangs. It's because of the draconian sentence that the judge gave him. His security score actually qualifies him to be in a low security prison because there's nothing there, except the charges. Basically she gave him a walking death sentence to die in this place. And Ross said to me, he goes, "Mom, it's a life sentence is a death sentence. It just takes longer." So she could have given him the mandatory minimum of 20 years. That was with the kingpin charge they loaded on at the last minute, basically saying a website host is the same as a kingpin. So that brought it from 10-year minimum to 20-year minimum, which is pretty long. It's a generation, but that wasn't long enough for this judge. Neither was 30, neither was 50. Again, she won't be happy till Ross is carried out as a corpse from this place for creating and having a part in a website. And just to be clear, there were many legal things and non-drug items on Silk Road. This is from a trial exhibit. Kevin McKiernan, who's here, told me that there are people he knows who could get CBD for their kids who had life-threatening seizures on Silk Road. And once the site was taken down, they were really upset. They didn't know what to do. They couldn't get the stuff that was saving their children's lives. And they couldn't go to Colorado because it's bad for them to be in high altitudes. So, the media, if you listen to the media, it's like it was nothing but horrible things, and that's not true. It was an open market, and it was up to people what they exchanged. Did have rules, so nothing was listed whose purpose was to harm or defraud. It was based on the philosophy of voluntary interaction, and it was up to users what they exchanged, except for things that victimize people. So no stolen items or information, no stolen credit cards, counterfeit currency, etc. Nothing to do with pedophilia, no child porn. This is also a trial exhibit. You'd never know it from the media or from the government, really. They just talked about very dangerous things to the jury. Curtis Green, who was a high-level administrator and then later the supposed victim of a murder-for-hire plot, where he's himself come out and said he doesn't think it was Ross. He was telling Danny that he would spend all day long policing the site to take off things that harm people. People only used Bitcoin. Hardly anybody had heard of it in those days. And it was Bitcoin's first proof of concept, the first marketplace where people actually used Bitcoin as currency. And so that a lot of people say that Ross is, because of this, because of putting Bitcoin on the map, for better or worse, that Ross is could be the second most important figure in Bitcoin's history after Satoshi Nakamoto. I also think that this is why they came down so hard on Ross. I think that this new currency that was out of the government's control got the attention of some very powerful people like my favorite senator, Chuck Schumer, who was a very influential member of the Senate Finance Committee and Banking Committee. And I think that's why he went after Ross so hard, and Bitcoin, by the way. It was not just Silk Road. He wanted to take down Bitcoin. And in fact, the NSA was tracking Bitcoin users a few months before Ross was arrested. Not terrorists, that's what they're supposed to be doing. They're tracking Bitcoin users, and of course Silk Road, because that's where Bitcoin was being used. This came out just this past March. Snowden had classified documents that The Intercept got and published this. This wasn't known until last March. So the government was very concerned about Bitcoin, very concerned. I don't think they really were worried about drugs particularly. And they're also worried about Ross's philosophy of free markets and, you know, people being able to be free to exchange what they want. And the judge even said, you know, it's notable that the reasons you started Silk Road were philosophical, and, well, I just don't know if that's a philosophy you've left behind. So I guess I have to put you in a cage for the rest of your life, because what if you still believe in this very dangerous philosophy of voluntary interaction and free markets? I think this is another reason that they were very threatened. She made it very clear. And of course, this is a violation of the First Amendment, free speech, and lots of things. And yeah, she called it troubling and dangerous. And Congress has prohibited a judge from considering people's political views when they're sentencing somebody. And of course, so does the First Amendment and other things. But she did it anyway. And just to make the point that I don't think it was about drugs, here are the other Silk Road defendants. So the person convicted of being the biggest drug seller on Silk Road got 10 years. It goes down from there to 5 years to 3 years. These are people who actually sold drugs, and a lot of drugs, according to the government. Ross was not accused of that. And to me, the most outrageous one is Blake Benthall, because he did exactly what they said Ross did, which was run Silk Road 2.0, which was bigger, had more drug listings, and was bigger than Silk Road. And the government, when he was first arrested, was like, oh yeah, we got this guy, and it's identical and all that. And then all of a sudden, Blake Benthall is out, very quietly. So this is from the Bureau of Prisons. So there's Ross's release date. It says life. It should say death. And there's Blake Benthall, which is November 21st, which was 13 days after his arrest. Nobody seems to know where he is. And the thing is, okay, so if Ross is so dangerous that he has to be kept in a cage for the rest of his life, isn't Blake Benthall dangerous too? And I'm not saying I want him in prison. I'm just saying, how about some equal treatment here? This is a little bit of a disparity. And it flies in the face of the Sentencing Reform Act that Congress passed to ensure consistency in federal sentencing and avoid this kind of extreme disparity, and yet it doesn't seem to be a problem. Nobody seems to care. We're supposed to be treated equally under the law, and Ross hasn't been. So we have been fighting, and with the help of a lot of people here at this conference, and couldn't get here, I gotten here without you guys. And we got all the way to the Supreme Court and thought we had a chance. There was a Fourth Amendment question that we thought they were going to address, and that question is, does the government have the right, without a warrant, to go rummaging around in all of your internet activities secretly, with no oversight, with no warrant? The Supreme, well, you know, of course we were saying no, and the Supreme Court didn't seem to think that was an important violation of the Fourth Amendment. You know, Reason Foundation was one of the people who joined this to say to the government, say to the court, hey, is it reasonable to say that the ordinary citizen assumes the risk that their internet browsing activity will be monitored by the government every time they log on to the internet? The answer is plainly no. And yet, the government says, no, it is. It is. And they have this loophole that they've been using for 4 decades based on this technology. It was based on a Supreme Court decision, Smith versus Maryland, about 4 decades ago, when it was ruled that the government could put a pen register which records incoming calls onto a dial telephone. And because the phone company has your phone number, the court said, well, then they can do it without a warrant. 3 judges said, no, that's still an invasion of your privacy, but it passed, and it became known as the third-party doctrine. And that has been ruling ever since. And basically, it's just saying that if a third party has your information, then you've given up your right to privacy. And of course, that was a dial telephone. It's dramatically limited our Fourth Amendment protections in the digital age, though, because things have changed just a little. And so now we have, access to all kinds of things, not just dialed numbers, but endless amounts of relevant information through our phones, which are essentially computers. And, we're talking about, our religious beliefs, our sexual orientation and activity, our medical records, our political affiliations, all kinds of things that can be scarfed up secretly with no oversight and used as they want to. And, this can be used to blackmail officials. It can be used to persecute enemies. It can be used for a lot of things. It's a slippery slope. And the Supreme Court, unfortunately, did not seem to think it was important to update our Fourth Amendment protections. I mean, as Reason pointed out, you don't really have a choice in this culture if you want to be part of the culture. Do you have a question?
I don't have a question. I have an amendment. Not can be, but is.
What?
These things, you say it can be used to...
Oh, yeah, it's being used.
Yeah,
yes, absolutely. It's being used all the time, and yeah, exactly. Thank you. We're all using it. To be part of modern life, you kind of have to use it if you want to be productive and all that, and here we are. So just to explain what happened in Ross's particular case, they can do this to any of us. All they need is your phone number or email address, and they can literally turn your devices into tracking devices, just like a collar on an animal. So with him, they got his email address. That's a whole other theory. I believe it was the NSA, but the government has a cover story. But in any case, they got it. And as William Binney, who was a whistleblower for the NSA and consulted on the Snowden movie and stuff, he said the government can use an email address or phone number without a warrant to get an IP address to go into the database and scarf up everything about the user. So that's what they did, and they got the IP address, and they saw that it was from Comcast. And so they put a pen register on the email address. And then from the email address, they identified the IP address. That was Comcast. They went to Comcast, got a subpoena, and got Ross's home address. So now we're in the house, from the world, anywhere in the world, to the house. And they then put a pen trap on the wireless router in Ross's living room, which actually has no third party. So that's a little bit of a problem there, but we'll see if we can do anything with that. But in any case, and from there, they got the unique ID or MAC address, put it on Ross's laptop, and from then on, they knew exactly what he was doing, no matter where he was, the government could just track everything he was doing and where he was. And they also, without a warrant, had a directional antenna aimed at his house and could track him through the house, what room they were in. They can go outside your house and just watch you. And they don't have to have a warrant. They can do this in secret. At least as far as things are happening now, very invasive. Of course, Ross's lawyers objected, and then the court said, no, third-party doctrine. It's all cool. It's all fine. So all of us, have a stake in this case because as of now, the government has complete, it's open season. And it's not even considered illegal by the court, even though it should be. There's a ton more about this case. Of course, there's the corrupt agents that weren't allowed to be known to the jury. That there's also other suppressed evidence And these guys had full, unfettered access to the site, could act as DPR, the administrator. They used it to steal money, but who knows what else they did. They were all over the site. There was blocked defense witnesses. The prosecutors lied about a lot of things. Also, we found out after trial that there was another corrupt agent who deleted very important evidence. Because the defense team found another folder with the complete conversation that was in there, but in trial, the jury only saw a truncated version. Also, it was found out that Dread Pirate Roberts logged in to the Silk Road Forum after Ross was already in prison in solitary. So I'm sure there were many DPRs. Well, actually, Curtis Green said, oh yeah, I acted as DPR sometimes. Lots of people did. And Ross took the whole burden of everything that was said supposedly by DPR and done supposedly by DPR.
He also said that they had access, login access well before that murder for hire plot
Yeah, what Danny said, they had login access way before the murder for hire plot, and these corrupt agents, well, Carl Force specifically, the whole murder for hire thing is based on his evidence and a chat that he says, yeah, this is a chat I had with DPR. I'll tell you what, Ross types like a techie. I've gotten many things from Ross. There's not a capital letter in sight. This thing is perfectly capitalized and it's all nice and polite, and I'm like, this is the phoniest thing I've ever seen. But, the government used it, not charged him. They didn't charge him with it. They never had to prove it. The jury never ruled on it. The judge used it anyway to justify her sentence. And then the one charge that was there got dismissed in this past June. So they got what they wanted out of it. They smeared Ross, turned him into a violent drug kingpin in the eyes of a lot of people. And now, oh well, no problem. And apparently they do this all the time, according to criminal justice attorneys I've talked to and others. So we decided that I realized there was so much I didn't know and the other people didn't know. So I and a team of people decided to go ahead and delve into the record. And this is just the public record. There's tons of information that's sealed, undisclosed, and encrypted that we can't get to, that the government is still hiding, and put together a narrative of this record. And we called it Railroaded, the targeting and caging of Ross Ulbricht, and it's on our website, and we had a volunteer professional narrator who's narrated it, so we have an audio, and then we put up a little slideshow to go with it, and we're putting it up in segments, so we put up 4 out of 6. Check it out. It sounds boring. Oh God, the record, blah, blah. It is really kind of interesting. It's very interesting. It's riveting, actually. It's kind of like, what? Are you kidding me? So, yeah, it's pretty amazing. You can see how they operate and what goes on behind the scenes. So, I want to read a letter from Ross. He wrote a letter about Bitcoin that he wanted me to read to you guys. So, hi everyone. This is an exciting time for Bitcoin, isn't it? When I first learned about it, it was trading for 6 cents or so. And by the way, he was telling me about Bitcoin, and I said, oh, should I get some? And he goes, no, Mom, it's too volatile. Don't do it. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Anyway, that was the worst financial advice I've ever gotten in my life. It's incredible to see something increase 300,000-fold in value. Wow. I saw its potential back then to transform our world, and it hasn't disappointed. If anything, it's exceeded my expectations. Now there's a multitude of altcoins that have sprung up and found their niche. With dozens of coins experimenting with variations on Satoshi's invention, I have faith that we'll find the optimal path forward, learning from each other's mistakes and copying success. We are in the middle of a profound technological revolution. It's beautiful and awesome. I'm grateful just bearing witness to it. It's also a profound opportunity. Our subculture is having an outsized influence on society right now that will only grow. We are the future, my friend. I'm proud of how we flourished and optimistic that the best is yet to come. I'm fighting every day for my freedom, and I'm hopeful that one day I'll be out there with you, Ross. Unfortunately, right now, Ross has been sitting in a metal box for 6 weeks because he put himself in there for protective custody because he refused to assault another inmate, and then that made him a target, and he was going to get assaulted. And so it's been pretty tough lately. I'm very hopeful he'll get out of there soon, but I have no idea when. And I don't know where they'll put him either. So, sign the petition, please. If you haven't, I've talked to people here who are so supportive and they haven't signed the petition. Sign the petition. And I know a petition's not a guarantee, but I have a goal of 500,000 signatures. We're past 95,000, which, you know, we're almost to 100. And I want to be able to say to President Trump, hey, 500,000 people think you ought to look at this. This is wrong. And so please sign the petition, share the petition, and then just go to our website and learn. And there's lots of ways to help. There's people in here, Nathan, who organized an auction in Acapulco. My God, it was so, of paintings that were done at the event, raised a bunch of money for us. Danny's been amazingly supportive through 5 years, stuck with us. So many people have been so great, and we wouldn't be where we are now and have gotten Supreme Court and now this without that kind of help from so many people. So very grateful. We also have a video project we're doing that some of you have participated in already, where I'm just taking a quick snippet of a video saying why you sign the petition, why you support Ross. I want to get like 300 of them so that we can show President Trump, hey, he's got the support of the crypto community. This is an up-and-coming, very strong community, and they'd really like you better they'd really think it was great if you commuted Ross's sentence. So anyway, I'd love for any of you to take part in it and just spread the word. We continue to fight, won't give up as long as he's in there. So just whatever you can do, I really appreciate it. Thanks. And I don't know if anybody has any questions, but.
Would you like me to
Mary.
pass around the little note cards people can sign to it right now and go get those?
Sure, whatever.
I'm gonna go do that.
Huh? Oh. Yeah, I don't know. They went, I didn't hear that. Ian.
What are the chances Trump will actually get to look at this? Is there somebody that has a connection to him that you know? Or?
Well, working on it. I'm putting it out there whenever I speak publicly. In fact, hey, if any of you have any connections, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is just getting to him and having him understand Ross is not a drug kingpin thug. He's a technological pioneer and innovator who was very passionate about free markets and not, someone who needs to be in a cage for the rest of his life. He's not dangerous. He's not a threat to anyone. And I'm hoping that we can have him see that. And yeah, I think it is a matter of having people who will back us say to him, yeah, this is important. So. Yeah, Kim Kardashian is at the top of my list.
President Kim Kardashian, so if you can tweet at her.
Yeah, Danny had a good idea because Ross wrote her a letter, so maybe we'll tweet that out. Hey, Kim, did you get the letter? Apparently she got her first Bitcoin a while ago, so maybe she'll be... I am really admire her for what she did. I think it's great Alice Johnson got commuted. And there's so many people in there, oh my God, that are, have these excessive sentences. Ross has a friend in there, Tony, who's doing life for marijuana that an informant said he sold 13 years ago. Life sentence. And the prison's in Colorado where it's legal on a state level. And the guy's got a life sentence for marijuana. It's nuts. It's just, It's really evil what's going on in our criminal justice system. And I've heard a really weird statistic. It's the prison population is bigger than 11 states. So they're building more prisons. So I'm like, who do you have in mind for these prisons? It's like they're just really make a lot of money, and I can go on. That's a whole other talk. I mean, a lot of money, and expand their power and shred our protections in the name of the drug war and with mass incarceration. And it's, until you see it, it's easy to forget, but when you see it, it's just shocking that this is America, They've hijacked our country's principles, or at least the founding principles.
Lynn, have you ever actually read the 13th Amendment to the Constitution?
I have read parts of it. I haven't read the whole thing, but I know it's about slavery, right?
Yes.
I mean, actually I have, but it was in a museum.
The 13th Amendment bans slavery
Except
as punishment for a crime. So when you wonder why the prison system is growing, it's because that is the only legalized form of slavery left in the United States. Only the government has the right to enslave people and employ slave labor, which they do.
Which
is why
they
private
do.
prisons exist.
And create office furniture.
Need to change that amendment, right?
Yeah, you think?
You think? That's the one they need to shred, not the fourth.
Looking to vote up for a vote in a couple states this year.
The 13th Amendment?
I don't know, the ability to enslave people as a form of punishment.
I don't know whether it is.
NPR junkie.
I would believe that, but you're talking, 150 years that amendment has been in place and has been. There's one federal prison in Louisiana that's particularly famous for this. I can't remember the name of it right now, but like all of the prisoners there are forced to work on literally a plantation.
Really?
Every day, yes.
Jeez.
I think it's like Angola or something like that. It's a strangely,
Angolas,
yeah, it's a strangely ironic name for the prison.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's, oh, wow. I try to use good mic technique, but might be a little loud. That's kind of why the prison overpopulation problem is not going away anytime soon, just for the same reason that chattel slavery was so hard to get rid of. There had to be a war and 600,000 dead in order to get rid of it, and I don't think we're going to see real prison reform in the United States until there's something on a similar scale. While I have the microphone...
And they make a lot of money in other ways, too.
Yeah, absolutely. But while I have the microphone, when I'm listening to this talk, and Lynn, I got to tell you, every time you talk about Ross, I'm really brought to tears. I wonder if there is the capacity for a broad, nonviolent movement about sentencing reform in general. Because listening to what's happened to Ross about him being in solitary confinement for his own protection, this is going to sound ridiculous. I want to go volunteer to spend a month in prison for him.
Oh, that's really nice, Nathan.
That's
that is really nice. I'm going to tell Ross you did.
That's my reaction.
I wish you could. I wish I could. I really do. But I don't think they're going to go for it.
No, I doubt they would go for that. But
no, that's really sweet.
I'm wondering if there's if that could be a form of demonstration. Is there the capacity for people to say, as long as this person, this family member, this friend of mine, is in prison for this period of time, then I'm going to put myself through that too, and have that same experience. I mean, obviously you can't just go check yourself into prison, but I know with mental health institutions, if you check yourself in, you can check yourself out. I'm wondering if there's some way that there could be a demonstration movement around that, the equivalent of a hunger strike or something
Probably
like that.
get a lot of press.
Yeah, that's kind of my point, is to draw attention.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of groups that are protesting, and it's both sides of the aisle. It's really bipartisan issue of criminal justice reform and sentencing reform, and actually Trump did come out and say he thinks sentences are too long and it should be reformed, which I was really glad to see.
Have you talked to the Koch brothers, by the way?
I've tried to talk to them. I've talked to people that are associated with them, but I haven't gotten anywhere with them yet. But
I have a friend that knows them. I'll put you in touch.
okay, great, thanks. They're doing good work. There's a woman, Brittany Barnett, who's a lawyer, in Dallas, who works with them, and she has a group called Buried Alive that's fighting people who have nonviolent people who have a life sentence for drug crimes. That's her specific thing. And she was involved in Alice Johnson's, and she's involved in this next effort by Kim Kardashian. So and there's lots of others. Freedom Works is doing a lot of stuff, just different people. Drug Policy Alliance. But yeah, it's kind of a cool idea. Of course, it means they'd have to care about people to let you do it, and they don't. So they really don't. I mean, they don't. People go, why do they do it that way? And I'm like, why ask why? They just, Yeah.
Yeah,
You
towards
get
reducing the sentence.
100,000 people all doing time, 2 lifetimes plus 40 years. It's pretty hard to do. But.
Yeah, but if we got 1,000 people to spend a month in prison, you kind of wrap that up, right? I know they would never treat it that way. And I'm not suggesting that somebody actually go spend time in prison, but if I knew it would mean that Ross would have freedom for a month, I would sit in a room, I would sit in a box for a month, and then get out and finish the rest of my life. I would do that if I knew that it meant
Thanks.
he would have a chance to be
That really means
out.
a lot, Nathan. He's treating it like a meditation retreat, he said, although it's getting to be a pretty long one. But he's meditating a couple hours a day. They won't let him have books even. He's
What-
just sitting in there, except he has a Bible. They let him have a Bible, so he's reading the Bible.
Can he get letters?
Yep, he can get letters. They can be printed out. Postcards. You can send books from they won't let him have books where he is now, so it's no point sending him books right now.
Crossword puzzles, things like that.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Crossword puzzles. In fact, I need to do that. Crossword puzzles and
Sudoku.
Yeah, right, exactly. Sure. Yeah, it'd be great. Yeah, the address is on the website in every footer and on the Take Action page, his address. So, no, I appreciate everybody's thinking of ways to make it better for him. And it's not just him, I mean, now that I've been going to prison for 5 years and getting to know the families and seeing what it does to families and the children, and it's like the evil that's going on is just horrible. And it's damaging these kids. You see these kids, they're all excited to come in and see their dad, and they're so happy, and then they leave just shattered and sobbing and, harmed. And, one mom said, oh, my kids were getting straight A's, and now everything's falling apart, and they send them far away from home. One woman, I ran into her. I knew her from New York, and there she was in Colorado, just, hey, hi. I'm like, oh my God. I said, we're running in the same circles, unfortunately, right? And, but it was the first time she could visit because it was so far. Her husband, and the father of her kids from the East Coast. So it's very hard on families and really wrong. So it's hard to believe it's going on in this country, the cruelty. And a lot of them are nonviolent. Over 60% of the people in the prisons are nonviolent, are drug offenders, and a lot of those drug offenders are nonviolent. And 17,000 people are serving life who are nonviolent. Life. I mean, when I was growing up, nobody served life. Hardly anybody did. And then whoever got life was a mass murdering maniac. No nonviolent people ever got a life sentence when I was growing up. A lot has changed since the drug war. And it needs to go back, at least to pre-drug war policies. Anyway. So don't forget the people in prison, because it's easy to forget them, but, well, I won't let you forget them. But yeah. Anyway, thanks for coming. I know it's the end of the whole thing, and hey, I'm glad, it was really good to be able to talk to you guys about it. Thanks.